talk to him.
How long did it take you to draw the full page with all the heroes?
That one's a long. I call that page "You'd Be Safe Here," and I just sell it as posters. I've actually got one over here. Look at all the comics. I have this little corner over here. Like, most of the art up here is by my friends. So I'm friends with a lot of other people that make comics. But I have this little corner over here for me. So, there it is. And there's me. And that's me when I was little. But there's 116 superheroes in here, and it took, I think, 13 days. It's about 120 hours, like 8 to 14 hours a day, for almost 2 weeks. You know how you have food in your house that you don't like and you don't know why you bought it and why it's there and you're never going to eat it? I ate all that stuff. Like, I didn't leave the house. It's like, once I got started on this, it was originally going to be like 20 people, and then it was like going to be 30 people, and then by the end of it, there's 116 characters in there. Because, I was sending it to my friends to show them, like, here's this thing I'm working on. And they'd be like, you got to have the Iron Giant. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So it just got out of control.
My question is related to the picture and everything. What exactly did you mean when you put yourself in that picture?
I'm behind Wolverine in there. If you look at, like, there's the boy that Batman's got his arm around is obviously me when I was 6 years old, but then I'm behind Wolverine. I drew myself in there because there's one of the things when you're crafting a story. Have you guys ever heard of this book called Elements of Style?
Yes.
If you're interested in writing, not just fiction, writing prose or writing blog posts, writing anything, you got to read this. This really short book by Strunk and White. But it's all about brevity and word choice and word usage, and I really apply it both to that, to images. So I try to make as few words as possible to tell the story because they're more powerful. You got to think of words like daggers, not like just barrage of rapid fire, It's, you hit somebody with the dagger in the right part with the right word, and then it's really effective. So originally, that scene was going to have like an interaction between grown-up me and kid me. Like, there's this line I like it, but it didn't make it to the book, which is, at the end of it, little me says, well, what are we going to do now? And then Batman says, now we're going to go save everybody else. And then, like, the TARDIS spins off. Which is kind of what the book has done. Like, I get messages from people in their 50s who've dealt with this same kind of, like, self-fear, like feeling like you're a werewolf or something's wrong with you because you've been through a trauma. And then guys write me, like, I've got 2 grown daughters and I just put my invisible gun down, But yes, that's me behind Wolverine. He's got my back.
I know some of you are writing about this, so I'm going to sneak some questions in that I know you might need to hear here. Why did you think that comics was the medium to tell this story and not like prose or maybe even an article or something like that?
That's a good question. I thought about it a lot. Once I had the kickover moment, like, my training's all in comics. Like, I went to school for comics. I've been working in comics for 15 years. I've been for 15 years. I've been drawing comics since I was, 7 years old, and it's kind of, the thing that's so great about the medium is it lets pictures do what visuals are good at, and it lets words do what descriptions and thoughts are good at, and dialogue. So it's kind of this perfect merger of the written word and illustrative art. And it's weird because, when I was a kid, people made fun of it. Like, I was literally the only kid in my school that read comics. I went to a small town school, about half an hour from here, and I had like one friend who got one book, but other than that, I was the only guy that was just reading comics every week and wanted to go on Wednesdays to get all the new ones and find out what was happening with Batman, But I liked this idea, like, the genre of superheroes and the medium of comics are two different things, you know. So it being my contest, the fact that it has to do with Batman, and I thought about making it like a made-up character, but it's a true story, so it wouldn't really make sense to use something that you made up to throw in there. You know what I mean? And I like comics because they. Have you guys ever heard of closure as a thing your brain does? Like when you look at a dotted line and you can see the, like, you know, the connect the dots picture, but you can already see what it is, that's closure in your brain. It's connecting the dots in your mind so that you can tell what the image is. Well, the way comics work is one panel next to another panel, this happens before this, and that allows you to see time happening. But all the time that's happening is closure in your brain. And so, like, you know, prose, like novels or the written word, like you're doing all the work in your brain. So it's a more personal experience than like seeing it written out, or, and like I was saying about like using fewer words, like you can't use fewer words if you're using, you know, all the prose to tell this story. So I felt like it would be a more emotional connection, I guess.
Okay. I think unless somebody else has anything else to ask, I'll continue. When we talk about the idea of the gun you have to your head, the symbolism of that, one of the things that our kids have to think about when they're writing an essay is like what motivates a character to act in a certain way. Was that gun for you a literal thing that may have happened, or was it more of like just a symbolic idea of, I don't know, maybe you kind of keep yourself in check? I mean, what was that?
Yeah, it was more symbolic. I mean, I grew up here in the South, and like you guys are in Chicago, so there's guns everywhere. My dad's a big gun guy. I'm not particularly, because I grew up with Batman, and obviously like having a trauma that involves a gun really keeps you away from them. But it was always an option. It was always there, and it was the easiest way to, like, the thing about, you know, kids with PTSD, undiagnosed, like having been through such a personal private trauma, not getting any kind of therapy, that kind of stuff. And then you see in the news all the time, like and that's one of these things I don't like about some of these supervillains in these movies, is sometimes they give the supervillain a reason for being terrible, like this happened to me and now I'm a dick. Sorry. So it's like, that's not the way it is. Every supervillain and superhero origin is the same. Some dude lucks into some magic amulet or some superpower, or finds out he's got an ancient heritage or something that gives him a power. And then if he or she is a good person, they're like, man, I should use this to help people. This is awesome. And if they're a horrible person, they're like, I'm going to hurt people and take back what's mine and things I want, and it's all about me. That's just the way it is. Like someone who has superpower, you choose, which is another great message of superhero stuff that I like. But the gun to your head thing, it's like when you're being told in all these things that people who were abused become like abusers themselves, which, I mean, I thought like I was a werewolf. Do you know what I mean? It's like you've been bitten, there's something wrong with you, you need to protect, you know, and like as a guy who cares about people, it's like I've got to protect others from me, especially children. So the gun in my head was a very visceral image that I really lived with for, you know, 2 decades of my life. And then it ended up working really nicely in the book because using the limited color palette that I did, where it's just black, white, and one spot color, I was able to have that appear ghostly in one simple color. And then the obvious thing Batman would say to that is guns. It's really weird to talk about your own life like this much, but I'm proud of how that came out in the book.